Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The story of the Prophet Muhammad SAW who always took his ummah. It was the year of mourning and the first year for the Prophet Muhammad SAW. The treatment of their inhabitants was increasingly sadistic and tragic to him. They felt distress because repeatedly they could not bluff and stop his pacing. Sadness increased when his wife Khadijah died. Khadijah was a woman, the first who believed in his preaching and accompanied him for a quarter of a century. He always entertained, helped, and encouraged the Prophet Muhammad SAW. Khadijah was also willing to give his body and soul in order to support the Prophet with the sadness of being abandoned by the person he loved the most, and the heavy pressure on the attitude of his people. The Prophet went to Taif, highland area, which is 100 kilometers more from the city of Mecca, hoping that the population, if you want, to accept his preaching. But this reality is not as sweet as the expectation expected by the Prophet Muhammad SAW. When he arrived, there was not greeted with a good response, but with insulting words and with aldings, saying it was Zaid bin Sabit, immediately trying to protect the Prophet so that he was not hit by the draw that was thrown by the residents of his fold. The Zaid bin Sabit was unable to withstand as the stone throws that were aimed at the Rasulullah SAW. So that being hit by the temple of the Prophet Muhammad SAW made his face dripping with blood as well as his teeth, breaking his teeth, bleeding from his temples. It was extraordinary, the sacrifice of the Prophet Muhammad, Masya Allah. Saying this condition to angels guarding to heal, immediately come the messenger of Allah and said, Muji ilaika ilas sama, raise your hands to the sky. Muhammad and asked Allah, do we rise the Taif mountain to crush those who do not have the manners? The word of the angel shall hold his apostles well stood. But what happened? The Prophet said, Alam nasrah laka sadrah. Noble words follow in his mouth. La, don't do that. Fa innahum qaumin la ya'lamun. They just don't know it yet. And said again the Prophet softly, Ya Rab, Ya Divine, I ask Allah that one day will come out of the wombs of the religions of Allah. Such is the patience and sacrifice of the Prophet Muhammad SAW for the sake of us, this community. From the start, he was stoned at Taif until the mountain God offered himself to hand over the hill of Uhud to those who stoned him. But he said no. Likewise, when he was about to die, what the thought was not his family or himself or friends, But what he said was, Ummati, Ummati. While Julius Caesar, when he died, did not call his people Romawi, as well as other leaders. Even after being resurrected in the afterlife, Rasulullah still thinks about us, his ummah. He asks, Aina ummati? Aina ummati? Aina ummati? And even after being put into heaven, the prophet was not called, because there were still his people who were going to heal. So he asked Allah for permission to go to heal, to seek and invite them to heaven, even with a fight as big as the Wahid. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.